kids. Thank you. That's good. I like, you want to send me what you just said so I can update my webpage with it?
It's on the meetup.
No, it's on the meetup the way I wrote it. I like the way he re-edited it. So.
Oh, okay.
All right.
All right.
Yes. Hello, everybody.
I'm going to go ahead and share my
ready.
screen.
Okay.
Okay. Just tell me if you can see it.
I can.
Everybody see it? Okay.
Before we get started, I just want to share a few thoughts. So like so I looked through all the photos today, and then I was kind of like, well, I wonder what the definition was that y'all were provided, because there's pretty randomness here. And so I thought I'd just go look it up myself. And architectural photography is one of those things that kind of has a pretty broad swath that it covers. So it can be buildings, it can be cityscapes, and it can be actually features of a building. But while I was doing kind of looking around for how I wanted to sort of approach this, I did come across a quote from Frank Gehry that said, architecture should speak of its time and place, but yearn for timelessness. Sorry. So anyway, I just kind of throw that out there because I think that there's a real truth to that when you think about what you're looking at. It's not just a building or a wall, it is to have some character. So I just color that with, put that out there so it'll be something y'all think about while I'm yammering at you in a bit. Okie Smokey. Let me make this bigger so it fills up the screen. All right, so you're just going to go through them and we'll go back, or what do you want to do?
So it's up to you how you want to do it. Do you want to do like a little critique and then choose your first, second, third, or whatever?
Yeah, that's fine. So how many do I get here?
Cheryl? You have
hold on. We have first, second, third. So there are, oh, I don't have it.
There are 8 in this particular.
There's 8.
8. Okay, so for second.
First and second.
Okay, that's
this is tight.
I didn't think there was a third. Okay, that's right. It's a race to the finish, people.
And this is the largest
all right.
of the screen, just so you know.
Okay. That's okay. I've got it taking up my whole screen too. All right, ready?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so this is obviously the Bean in Chicago, and it's a ton of fun to shoot and try to find the like proper reflections. So one thing I dig about this is I really do actually like the gold light that is in the bottom of the Bean, because it's this aspect of the city that you can't see off to your right? So you're getting a reflection, but you're actually getting more than what you see, and I like that. But I would say that for the artist who did this, and I'm going to say this much more than once in this endeavor, when you're doing architecture or cities and you're using a wide angle, your camera's going to distort. And in addition to distortion, often when we're shooting, no matter how much we try, our alignment is not correct. So in this case, all of the city, including the Bean, it's all leaning to the left. So the one thing I would tell you is that when you're in post, and quite frankly, it could be in the iPhone, or I don't know about droids, but it could be in an iPhone, and you Snapseed, you can straighten this up, and you can do it in Lightroom, and you can do it in Photoshop under the geometry tool now, and historically called transformation. And really it's as simple as drawing a few lines of the things on the things that you want to be straight, and then the system will do it for you. So I would just offer that when you're trying to like present images of buildings, obviously the buildings in the Bean are curved, so it's not really about that, but the buildings on the right-hand side are clearly leaning forward, and that could be straightened to not give that effect. So next. So this one is pretty pixelated and it's a little bit hard to see. So I will say for me, the coloration of the sky doesn't work. It doesn't feel natural, it doesn't feel real. In addition, there's some definite cloning going on here. So I don't know if this was really about a sky replacement or if it was, there's some cloning happening on the top left of the building and on the bottom right of the like I guess, what amounts to clouds that are coming down the right-hand side of the building. And then, much like I mentioned before, the building itself is actually leaning to the left. So you're not square to the building, and maybe you weren't square, but the columns don't end in the same place. And then lastly, in an image like this, I would work to capture both of the stained glass windows instead of having that left-hand side of the framing of the stained glass window cut off. So I think this one, you just need to kind of maybe think about it and reshoot it again, if you can. Next. So this is a interesting picture. It feels like it's Santorini. I don't know that it is, but that's what it feels like. Having not been there, I'm not 100% sure. So one of the things that first struck me about this is I feel like even though the lights are coming on, the buildings feel very gray. Like I feel like there could be maybe an adjustment of the highlights or the whites, actually probably the white slider here to really kind of open up the whites a little bit because they feel muddy to me. The rest of the image is fine. I would probably also, in general, the city looks like it's kind of leaning back, and I don't know if that's the case or not, although some of the buildings do look straight. But I would question whether or not the 3/4 inch on the left and across the bottom of the image, if that can't be just cropped in a little bit, because you have this like white, almost feels like a waterfall, but it might also just be a white scarring on that mountain. I can't tell, but it totally, that's it exactly, thank you, totally draws the eye right to it. So I have this waterfall effect of this city that comes down the hill, which is beautiful. And then it takes me right down to this like scarring or water on this at the bottom of the image. And then from there, I'm out of the image, right? Because there's nothing going on the rest of that wall. And it's not really part of what you want me to look at. So this could just be about cropping and picking the part of the city you want me to look at, or not me, excuse me, like the viewer in general. But I would really be conscious about other bright things that are in the frame. So this arched building, this kind of like, kind of curved building in the bottom left corner, there's a big clump of white right in the corner. And so that's a distraction. If the mountain had come all the way across, it wouldn't be as distracting. But because it's there, it takes you down to the corner and out. And there's also a couple of white lights up at the very top. Not the ones that go out to the right, but the ones that are left of that. Yep. And there's one above it and one to the right. All four of those, just clone them out. Nobody knows what they are. Nobody cares what they are. But what they do is now I go up to the scene and I see these little white dots, kind of stop and think about them for a while. And then again, I'm out of the scene. So just be really mindful. And since the cityscape is cut off on the right, I would crop it like it was deliberate so that it didn't feel like you were just nipping off a small part of that one last building. Next. So as I mentioned when I first started, that part of architectural is also features of the architecture, right? Like different, just sort of more of an aspect or one thing that you're calling out about the architecture. So definitely think that this fits in. One of the things that struck me about it though is I feel like it's kind of weird because it's leaning in a couple of different directions. The building in the back, and you can tell by the window, is leaning backwards. And you can also tell that by the corner that's created in the top left corner. So Sam, if you like kind of go up there, you'll see where the building, like the structure that she's on ends, and there's a little corner up at the top left that, that up in the corner there. So you can see that this picture is leaning back because it's created that corner. So there's two things about that. And this is a really big deal in architectural photography. You have to be really mindful not to create corners and angles like that, because again, here's a corner that is a directional out of the frame. It also highlights the fact that this feature is actually leaning back. And I recognize that you're looking up at it. Okay, somebody is not muted. And, but you can fix it in post so that it stands straight up, and that will help. So the other thing about architectural photography is trying to make sure, and it's not specific to this, it's more global, just a comment, when you're shooting things in architecture, you want to make sure that you leave enough space around the image, both left, right, top, and bottom, because when you go about fixing the distortion created by the wide angle lens or the lens that you're using, you will cut in. So if you like zoomed out to this, you haven't really left yourself enough space to straighten it without cutting into your feature or into your subject. So you want to make sure you leave yourself a little bit of breathing room so that you can get the correction without losing the subject matter of your image. Next. So this is beautiful. I don't know if it is. It kind of strikes me like this might be the train station in France that I've seen that kind of looks like this, but there could be other train stations that are similar. But really beautiful sort of structured ribbing and like sort of the rib cage of this building going down. So I really like it. I appreciate wholly that there's no, if any, people in here, they're far enough back that they're not distracting. In this particular image, though, you can see that the pillars are leaning in, particularly as they come up to the left and right. So this would be just another example where I feel like the horizon is straight, which is great. But with the transform tool, you could drop a couple of straight lines on those columns and it would straighten up the front of this image and you wouldn't get that kind of bowing effect. So it's just something to think about. I do like the effect here of the vanishing point. You can kind of tell it's vanishing into a city or possibly a tunnel out in the back and everything, but it's the lines are just nice and straight and really defined. So this is a good job. Thank you. Next. Sorry. So this is kind of a cool use of architecture, right? Because we're getting this old building in the background, and yet we're getting that as a reflection into it from a very modern building. So I think it's pretty cool. I will say though that in this particular image, the fact that that bus is there and the bus is white and there's a yellow truck behind it, that's much more of an attention getter than the rest of the scene. So it's almost as if the bus was really the subject, even though I don't think that that's what the artist was trying to achieve there. So I would say that even just like whatever that is, right, a minute later where there might be a darker car or no car would enhance this considerably, because right now you see it, and I definitely look to the like three windows, like dead center top, and then I come down and I start reading the bus, and I don't think that's where you want me to be paying attention. Next. So this is a really beautiful photo. I love the long exposure on this because it has taken the water and smoothed it out. And what we get is the reflection without a bunch of ripples through it. So I dig it. The buildings themselves and the lights out in the distance are not quite sharp. So I'm not exactly sure where the focal point is, or maybe better said, even what the f-stop was. It might have needed a little bit more f-stop. Oh, it's up here in the corner. So it is 13. So that's interesting. I think then the issue is maybe the point of focus is off a little bit, so that the building, particularly the brightest one, just the center and left of center, viewing it, are a bit soft. You don't really get the crispness. Another thought about this, if you have an opportunity to shoot it in the future or something like it, is if you take that from F13 up to F22, you'll have starbursts across all those big bright lights as well. But this is nicely done. I dig shooting cityscapes at night. So. And by the way, before you change that, all the buildings are nice and straight. And I think the horizon feels a little bit off on the left, but I think that has more to do with where the water line is, right? So the water line turns, and so it's going to give that effect of not being the horizon line being off. Go ahead. So this is a beautiful image of this cathedral, and you can tell here that the photographer, and I have to assume it's either done as a vertograma, which is a multiple level pano that goes vertical instead of horizontal, or they took the time to straighten up the edges, because a nice big wide shot like this will create that bowing effect that we saw on the train station. So assuming that they probably didn't go through the steps of taking a vertebrama because that's pretty long and drawn out. I think the artist did a good job of making sure that our pillars were straight. So we have these really beautiful archways. The altar itself is straight, and as is the columns. And so we feel like we're hovering up here looking into the scene instead of kind of glancing and trying to crane our neck and look up at the scene. So I think this is nicely handled. Okay.
So do you want me to pull them up and you can tell me if it's in or not, or first or second?
Well, yeah, let's go to first and second. So for first place is the cathedral.
This one?
I just think that's beautifully handled. Yep.
Okay. All right.
And, oh, you do have one more comment about this. It's not going to change it from first place. I would consider playing with the contrast a little bit, because it's kind of, those dark back ways are those sort of back enclaves should be a bit darker. So it's very bright, and fits the place that I'm thinking of and I've been in. I don't think it's this bright. So if you just tone it down a little bit, it'll really make the rest of the things that are lit glow. And then the nightscape is the second place.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So
yeah.
Second place, Cheryl, are you able to figure those out?
Yep. Second place is Richard Laduga. It's the San Diego skyline.
Excellent.
Cool. I wasn't sure what town that was.
And the first place is St. Patrick's Cathedral, pre-COVID-19, Pamela Miller.
Beautiful.
Nicely done.
Great.
Good job.
All right. Pam, did you want to say anything? I don't know if Richard's online.
He is. I saw him earlier.
Oh, good. If either of you want to say something about your piece, you can. We have time. You have to unmute yourselves.
Yeah, this is Rick.
Oh, hey, Rick.
Hi, I did the train station also. So.
Oh, yeah.
That and the escape. It was the night I took this is San Diego. Mm-hmm. And it was a very light mist going on. And I just had a hard time being out there in the almost rain while I took it. But I agree that the buildings aren't as sharp, and I'm not sure why. But I was focused. My objective on this was to practice using the long exposure at night, which I'd never done before. So that was my my objective.
Great job. Handled that part of it really well. Yeah, yeah. And it's a challenge to get the. It's a challenge to get that. And if you have like mist going on, you might have had a little bit of moisture on the lens. I mean, there's a lot of things that factor in, but nicely done.
Thanks for the feedback.
Great. Mm-hmm. And Pam, do you want to say anything?
A friend and I did a bus tour to New York, obviously, before this year. Patches church. And I was amazed because there's a lot of people that I had to work around. So I was amazed that I actually got the picture.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
okay.
It's beautiful. It's well done. And I mean, I'm sure you've cropped like people out of the bottom of it, but because you can see like one little head, but honestly, it's not a distraction. The people would have been more distracting in my opinion. So nicely done.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to novice monochrome.
All right. So can you just like click through them? You don't have to do it slowly. I just want to see them all again. Okay, keep going. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
All right, and Cheryl, this has 6.
Right, and it has first and second as well.
Okay.
Okay. So I really think this is really well handled. in terms of just the whole aspect of it, right? You really get the sense of the height of the building. I really do like the fact that light fixtures in it. In fact, I can often be found laying at the base of the Washington Monument, trying to capture different flag motion with the monument. So very similar to this kind of feel. So I just think this was well done and well seen and well conceived. I would say, so broadly speaking, about all the black and whites, and this is almost throughout all of the categories, when you're doing black and white, really make sure that you are covering all the zones. So you want to have really nice deep blacks. And so you do have that in this image with these windows in the front and the light fixture, but also make sure that you get some real whites out of it, because even though there are some bright windows, so you would have to temper it with that, there's a very grayness to the image. And so if you really want to kind of work with your contrast to make sure that you're covering that whole zone gamut from 0 to 10. That's just a kind of a broad thought. That's not specific to this image. All righty. So interesting sort of old building. It does feel like, even though on the left-hand side, that like edge of the brick is straight, it does feel like it's leaning back a bit in terms of the image itself. So it almost feels like it needs to kind of roll forward, because if you look on the right-hand side, those bricks are not, the doorway isn't in line with the right-hand side. So the left-hand side is nice and straight, but the right-hand side goes back. Again, in the geometry tool, if you draw a straight line on the left-hand side where it is straight and a straight line on the edge of that door, it'll change the photo for you and stand the whole picture up. So that's something to think about. In addition, in this, you have in the top right-hand side, you have these windows up here or something. It's either an awning on the right-hand side or windows above you. And that has created a bright arrow with white lines that take you straight out to the corner of the image, frankly, out of the image. It's the brightest thing in the scene. And then when you get up there, there's straight lines and they're going right out. So you have to be really careful. Now, when you stand this up, most of that's going to be taken away in the adjustment, and then crop it out. If you can't clone it and get rid of it, then you need to kind of come down and I think the alignment and a little bit of a crop will help get rid of that. In terms of the rest of the image, it is, I'm not sure what all you want me to like look at, right? And so I see the sign and then I see the words in the window and I'm really caught in looking at those. So from an image of a architecture or a building, I mean, I do like the pattern and I like the archways and the building itself, but the strongest message here is what's in the words. And so something to think about, it kind of going back to that long-lasting timelessness of the architecture. Not to say that I don't like grungy buildings. So I might have thought about different ways to sort of capture maybe the one window and not the angle of the window. Next. Thanks for answering the question, Dan. So another kind of cool image, very similar to the other one that we had going straight up. The biggest difference I think here is that the building is leaning back. So you can sort of see that on the very left-hand edge, you have like a little bit of the window, whatever it's called, sort of the edge of the window framing, and also a little piece of the window. So, and a bright spot that's like literally right there, go up halfway, okay? Right there. So the easiest solution to that part of that problem is just crop it out. There's no value to those little pieces, but they're on the edge, they're bright, and they'll take your eye out. So partly there's that. Also, you can tell because they exist that the building is also leaning back. So you kind of need to straighten up that wall, and then that in and of itself should crop those little features out. If not, just crop in enough that it drops it. The other thing here is that the lights, which I don't mind being in the image, by the way, even though they are blurry, don't even care about that because our subject matter is our building and the shapes and waves of the building, but the lights are leaning. So again, you want to straighten up the left-hand side and drop a line down the light itself, and you'll see them all straighten up, and the image should come pretty square pretty quickly. Lastly, in this image, there was definitely something to the right. So Sam, if you go to the right of those lights, on the back light, you'll see right there where the mouse is now, there's something cloned. And then if you go straight up, you'll see that there's more stuff cloned. You have to take the time to do that well. And because what it ends up looking like is a dust spot or smudgy or whatever, but it becomes a distraction. And because it's like right on the edge of the frame, again, you leave the cool subject matter of the building and you travel out of the image. Next. So this is, it's in a bad shot. I mean, it's one of those shots where you wish you had kind of some storm clouds to be involved here. For the most part, the image is pretty straight on. The building itself, the horizontal feels like it might be a little high on the right, so above all the archways. But the buildings in the back and the building on the left is pretty much square. So it's one of these are kind of one of these things where there's so many lines, you're going to have some challenges. I like the patterning. It looks like that might be lawn from the mowing of it. I think that's kind of pretty cool because it leads us in. And I think the challenge that I probably have here is, and I would have the same challenge if I was shooting it, I would want to get all of the little the stained glass windows and all of the points on their arches. And yet I would struggle with the fact that I have this big open white spot. So unfortunately, because the rest of the image has a lot of gray to it, and it doesn't have this, again, the gamut of the zone system, so there's not real brightness within the building in our front, you see it and then go straight up to the top right of this image and you look at the sky, which doesn't have anything going on. And then the buildings in the back are not really your subjects. They're beautiful, but your subject is this sort of front area and these archways, and instead you go to the back because of the bright light and things are not as in focus and whatnot for obvious reasons. So I would just say that this might need to be played with a little bit in post-processing, because I think you could really bring out that whole front row of archways, draw that out to its bright, bring those whites up some, and keep the viewer more centered in the bottom half of the frame. Next. So this is again one of these images that suffers from a lack of a sky. Anybody who knows my photography, I am absolutely love leading lines and vanishing points. So I get the idea here and I get the draw. I personally wish there weren't so many tall straight things above, right? So many lamp posts and stuff like that. I'm not sure that they add here. Having half the word Alexandria, you know, it's bright on a dark background, so you kind of go look at that. I mean, it gives you a sense of place, but the whites here, you even lose the edge of the highway on the right because it's bright and it blends right into the sky. So for me, this just doesn't quite work. The leading line doesn't take us to something that's sort of demonstrative. It doesn't give us a place to land, but it also doesn't vanish completely so that we just can keep going forever. So I like it and I like the idea of it. I'm not sure. I actually really like the shadows. I mean, I'm not sure that I think cropping up down significantly into a half its size wouldn't even be better, just because you get all those kind of cool shadowed lines on the bottom right. Next. So this, I kind of like the title. The sign itself. The sign is leaning back, which you can tell because of the side, the right-hand side, it's not evenly balanced for that sort of edge. But I think the thing that strikes me most about this is besides it needing contrast and some deeper shadow, particularly in underneath the words and around where there is casted shadow from the lettering, it's not in focus. So I'm not sure. Sorry, you're gonna have to hang on one second while I take care of this. I have a woodpecker trying to build a home in my house. So anyway, I think the biggest thing here is that I want it to work, but it's soft. And so I almost feel like it's, is it my eyes or whatever? I think the biggest issue is just that there isn't a focal point here. Everything is soft. So something to be careful of.
Okay. Do you want to just tell me which ones? 1 and 2?
That's 1.
Oh.
And the third one is 2.
This one? Okay. And
oh, yes.
Both of those. Oh, go ahead, Cheryl.
Damn. Both of those belong to Tammy Smith.
Hey, Tammy. Is Tammy on?
Yeah, I'm on.
Excellent.
So the first one is an apartment building, one of the new apartment buildings in Tyson's Corner.
I thought it looked familiar.
Yeah, and the second one is an apartment building in Burlington, Vermont.
Oh.
So, and I never thought about straightening the building, like you said, Denise. So I'll be more mindful of that next time.
Yeah, and I got to tell you that first building in Tyson's looks much better in black and white than color.
Yeah.
That's funny. Now you made me want to know what it looks like in color. This one, interestingly enough, doesn't need any straightening. So this is, I think, just handled quite fine. On the other one, you might find that by straightening that left edge and getting rid of those just little pieces of those windows and straightening the lamp, particularly the front lamp, not the back lamp, it'll straighten everything for you. So
okay,
got to play with it a little bit.
I've never used that tool, so I'll have to figure it out.
Cool. All right. All right, we're going to go into intermediate color. He's killing woodpeckers.
I might.
Has 19
hit it with a bullet if I could. Get off my house. All right, sorry. He left. I have these things. What? It was a gigantic woodpecker making a home. Just like, what's going on? Yeah, you can buy these things that you hang from the eaves, and I just haven't hung them yet, but I'm going to need to do it because I don't want them to destroy the siding.
Yep.
Okay.
We have
Can you blow through these?
19
we have 19.
images, first, second, third, and 2 honorable mentions.
Okay.
You want me to just go through them really quick?
Yep.
Oops.
Okay. So it's very similar to the one that we just saw Tammy's. Again, and I think it's well done. It's actually a beautiful building, having stood there, but it's just well handled. Like it is leaning back, but that's whole part of it, just like the other one. It's meant to, and it feels like it fits in the frame well. Probably the only challenge I would see a little bit is just where you have sort of that front bottom right, sort of the way, not quite there, but a little bit less of that. So just that bottom part, right, that kind of doesn't end all the way across. Yeah, if the line had actually continued all the way into the corner, I probably would have felt a little bit better about that. I didn't really notice the first time though, but I'm looking at it more closely now. So either kind of cut it off or have the whole thing show. But otherwise, I just think this is pretty well handled. I would probably, personally, lighten from the middle to the top with just an adjustment brush, just a little bit of lightness, maybe even actually not exposure, just opening up the shadows, because that part of it's darker. So what happens is it kind of fades away into nothingness. And actually I think the whole thing kind of lit going up would be really pretty. But again, that's my 2 cents. I just think this was, pretty well handled as it is. Next. So again, as we talked about earlier, feature of a building, I do think this is handled nicely. It's straight, it feels straight, and it feels comfortable. I feel like there's not a lot of tonality here, though, because even under that eave, the shadows are really open. So quite possibly just pulling the shadows back a little bit would give this a little bit more sort of, make it a little bit more complex. And right now, it just feels washed out on the white roofing area. So something to think about. But I think that it's, actually, what are we shooting at, F9? So I think the cross in the front is probably where the focal point was, because the cross at the top, excuse me, is a little bit soft. So, but the cupola part of it isn't. So I don't know if I would maybe experiment with either shallower, so the whole tall piece is out of focus, or higher f-stop to get the whole thing, the 2 cross is in focus. But I'd have to play with it. It's like, that's all kind of a hard call. I just happened to notice it this time. I didn't notice it the first time. But now that I see it, because it's taller and more prominent, it stands out to me that the back cross is not in focus. Okay. This is an interesting building. I like all of the different colors, and I like all the different textures. I just sort of didn't notice it before. I feel like the room that's actually in the red looks pretty straight. It might be a little bit off. I think that's where you'd have to align it, is to make sure the top of that sort of center part of the structure is straight, because you have a lower horizontal green roof and a higher one. So they don't play well together. They make it feel like it's really off. And it's not so much that they're off, it's they're different heights. So I play with it a little bit. The orange roof does look straight though. So I just think there's a lot of lines going on that kind of exaggerate whether or not the building is off angle at all. And I do think that the flags in the bottom right-hand corner, I just think this is going to be a challenging subject, but the flags in the bottom right-hand corner are pretty light. So your lightest roof is the bright orange roof, and it goes down to something light in a corner. And they're, to me, like once you're in a corner, you get stuck there trying to figure out what they are, or possibly even leaving the frame. So something to think about. And I think the challenge is no matter how you crop it, it's going to be dissatisfying, because you're going to get rid of the little sort of loops at the bottom of that bottom roof line. And then I think just in general, there's more blue sky than you need here. So the fact that there aren't any dramatic clouds, the fact that it's like just a super bright sunny day, I would just pull that down. I think you could get rid of 2 inches of that sky, so it just doesn't touch the little spire sticking off the top of the top roof, but cuts just above it. And you would really kind of focus people in on the roof line itself. The sky up there, once you get up into that blue, there's nothing going on. So you just kind of lose the viewer. Next. So this is a bit of an example, right? Same blue sky, basically. Not blue sky to me is the bane of all existence as a photographer, although you can drop white clouds into it pretty well. So I'm a big fan of that. But in this case, the sky's been cropped down. So even though there's still more sky than I would like to see as a photographer, it's not all white sky. Blue sky. You don't have this huge opening above the flag there. Otherwise, the building itself is like nice and straight. It's very interesting. I do feel like you could stand maybe some contrast, a little bit more shadow in it. But otherwise, I think it's nice. I think the challenge is from a viewer standpoint is I'm looking for something to like really focus on. And if it's the little panes of stained glass, then I almost wish that they were more prominent, because what we do have is a big swath of blue. So I'm not just one of those kind of images that it's sort of like, where should I be looking? I will say that on the bottom of the both left and right, on the left bottom, the orange part of that window pane looks off angle. And on the right-hand side, you have what looks like a pane that's open. So again, it's that arch is creating an arrow, brown arrow pointing down to the right. And the fact that there's something down there that's really structured and dramatic, and probably the deepest shadow in the place draws right down to it. And I'm not sure, at some point, if you cut it off, you've kind of lost the effect of the bottom of those windows. So I just think it's a challenging subject, and well done for as challenging I think it is. Next. All right, so it's an interesting building, and I think it's an interesting shot. Again, I think there's like 2 inches, 3 inches of too much sky. Doesn't even need to be there. If there was some big dramatic cloud, perfect. If not, cut it down. The windows themselves, so the 2 sides of the building, it's not in balance. So I'm not even to the cement yet. I'm just talking literally about the building. The center thin column of windows is leaning left. And then if you look, even though the windows are shadowed on the top left of the building, compared to the top right of the building, the top left, nope, down to the, yes, go further to left and right. Keep going left, 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 that part. Yep. It's right on the frame, edge of the frame, whereas on the right-hand side, those windows have some breathing room. So my thought here is they both need to have the same equal amount of breathing room and be in balance, or, you know, they have cut them off, right? And just kind of focus a little bit tighter into the building and not worry about them if balance is going to be difficult. And you can do that in post, right? So I'm just talking about whether or not you could capture all maybe the way you wanted in camera. The roof line itself, everything is off. So the building is tilted left. The lamp posts are leaning left. And then the road, the walkway is all kind of leaning, and yet the front left-hand corner of the sidewalk is high. So it's a little bit all kind of off. Cattywampus, maybe, right word. That stuff is all totally fixable in post. So again, finding the place to draw your straight lines, and then draw a horizontal line right across the front of those stairs. The whole thing will straighten up, and then just cropping to make sure that the building itself is in balance if you're going to pick the center for the building. So another night image, nicely handled. In this particular case, the building, the Capitol building is nice and sharp. The lights are nice and sharp. You can see within the Christmas tree. Looks like the top light of the Christmas tree is pretty bright, but otherwise, and it would be, by the way, I'm just saying you can still see that there's color within the Christmas lights on the tree. Nicely balanced between the top, what you see in the image, and the reflection of the image. So I think that's really cool. Long exposure, so you can tell there's a little bit of movement in the water, but by and large, a nice smooth reflection. So I think this is just nicely managed. If you look at particularly the lights on the left-hand side, you've got starburst, which is kind of cool because you've got them at an f8. So it's, I think the reason you don't have starburst on all the bright lights is probably because it was f8, not higher. But I just think that the artist here took some time in getting it sort of aligned right. So I think it's nicely handled. I think the only comment, now that I'm really looking at it a bit more closely, is because that car stripe, the streak of the car on the right is both bright white and red, I would frankly just crop it right out, basically crop that tree all the way out till you crop to the bush. And that way the red, because what you have is this like beautiful image that you follow along, and then you have a red arrow basically pointing you off the frame, and it's bright and it's red, so it draws your attention. Just crop that right out, and I think you'd have a nice set photo slightly off center, which is perfect. It is already, it just exaggerated a bit. All right. So it looks like a beautiful place. Wouldn't mind being there. I think he's back. It's everything is leaning to the right. So the buildings in the back right are actually standing nice and straight, but the boats, the masts of the boats are leaning right. In the pink pink like either hotel or apartments is leaning right, and then the back left is leaning to the right. So I would straighten that up, make sure that the horizon line across the water is straight, and that all these things that are basically right about where Sam's cursor is, everything left of that needs to be straightened up. The other thing that struck me about this is it doesn't really have a lot of contrast. So its tonality is very just kind of one note. Even though you've got bright greens and dark greens and stuff like that, I think it just, it feels, it's not HDR-y in the kind of crunchy way of HDR, but I think if you basically just drew in some more contrast or some darken the shadows, it would pop a lot more, because right now the kind of bright areas are lost for the fact that the shadows are open so much. Something to think about. So I'm not sure for me that this particular image fits the category of architecture. I feel like it's a street scene. I feel it's about the street vendor or the people who are talking to the vendor. And unfortunately, you got these two guys in these like bright orange and red shorts and bright white shirts, dead center. So literally the only thing I see are them. And if they were gone, personally, I'd take the dude out on the right too, or left. I would just kind of wait. So it became about the guy in the center. Then I think it'd be an interesting kind of story about this moment. I like the building. I just noticed the if you go onto the building on the left, it looks like the Starbucks symbol. I mean, it makes me wonder if that's not a symbol they poached from someplace, or if that isn't a Starbucks in there somewhere. So anyway, I think the scene has some potential here, but honestly, there's just things that are more distracting. So the guy in the blue shirt, not the vendor, but the guy in the blue shirt, the two guys in the white shorts are distractions, the woman in the white pants, and then that, Starbucks cup on the ground, also a distraction. So I'm not sure that this works as well for this category as it might for some other kind of street photography. This is a National Cathedral. It's beautiful when it's at the right time of year. Generally, it's a March and April thing, although I don't know that's 100% true. In March and April, the stained glass casts light all the way to the floor. So if you've never been there, that light up at the top is cast throughout the entire building. It's actually quite lovely. I think this is nicely done. It's nice and straight for the most part. There's probably a little bit of straightening that could happen on that right before the arch starts on the left. It's a little bit different at the top and bottom, but that's minor. The one thing that kind of draws me away from this is that the spotlight is so white. And I like that it's a starburst, but it is the only thing, at least for me, I want to go explore other aspects of it and all the beautiful stained glass, but I'm drawn like a moth to a light straight to that white light. And it is so white and so bright that it's like really overwhelming to me in the image. Now, I get that you had a spotlight facing you, and that's fine. What I would think about doing is toning that from a bright sort of daylight white to a warmer white. And you could do that with a brush. You could do it as a layer, just depends on what program you're in, but you could use it as a selective adjustment and just using the temperature, warm the brush and then kind of paint over it and work it till it kind of blends in, because the rest of the light in here is golden. And I think even though it'd be still bright, it won't be as kind of in your face, because right now it has a green tint to it. So I just think like taking the warming to it will remove some of that. But it's a beautiful photo, and it was well handled for the archways and height and everything. So next. Alrighty, beautiful night in DC. when I first looked at this, I feel like maybe the Washington Monument is just slightly leaning to the left, and it feels like the bridge could come down a hair on the right. So I'm not talking about something dramatic here. Lincoln looks nice and straight. It feels like, and it could just be the perspective, and that's just kind of the way that it is, but it does feel like it's just slightly up on the right-hand side. But otherwise, you know, it's just nicely handled, nice long exposure. I think you could probably crop an inch or two off of the bottom. Oh my God, that bird is going to kill me. Come up. So even though you might be cropping into the white reflections on the right, I think that's going to be okay, because then you still have the pattern going out. And then I would crop in on the left, because you have a white reflection that's like literally on the edge of the frame, and a white light off of the what's probably either a building roof or a crane way out in the back behind Lincoln, like way off to the left-hand side. And both of those are lights that'll take you, you basically follow the bridge lights down, you see the monument, you see Lincoln, you follow the bright lights with the starburst, and then you have two lights on the edge, and you're done. You're going to leave the scene. So I would think about just maybe kind of cropping up in a little bit from the left to stop that from happening. And this is a great example of where almost all the lights have starbursts on them, and it's shot at f/22. So, but otherwise, I think it's kind of a cool shot. You might think another quick thought here, Sam. Sorry. There's a lot of sky, and your cloud interest is kind of left and right. You could crop it down and even go for sort of a more dramatic pano. Just kind of pull that in. It would make the buildings bigger. Okay, next. All right, so this is a great, just an image of, you know, sort of this really old ancient architecture with totally cool modern architecture. So it's definitely got a cool effect to it. Again, sadly, a bald sky, which I know you can't control, but it's just such a downer when that happens. And it happens a lot. I mean, it's not like only your experience. It happens when I travel. So it's just like so frustrating. I think the thing that's most dramatic is, even though this sort of front pane of the mirrored building seems pretty straight.
Is it still running? Do you hear it?
Done
with the bedding.
Hang on.
It's done.
Sam, you can mute Ken.
I'm going through.
Okay, sorry. It's okay, Ken. Just saying. So but the building, the older architecture, that building is really leaning forward and to the right. So that it gives the whole kind of thing this little bit offset feeling, as well as the fact that the mirrored building looks like it's leaning back, and that's over dramatized by the fact that there's this sliver of sky that goes down the right-hand side of the mirrored building. So I think it's a really cool idea. I think this just needs some straightening out in post. And here's an example of it. And it is square cropped to a square, so it's possible you had enough space to start with. Depending on how much space you have on the left side of this image, when you stand up this older building, this church, you're going to lose the saint at the top. So when you're shooting something like this, shoot it wider so that you can do all this changing of aspect and then crop to what you want. So just keep that in mind in general. Next. So this is a nice building. I mean, it's a nice shot. I think that in this, what I see is like both sides of the buildings are coming in. Again, it's a wide shot, so it's got a little bit of movement. I would straighten the left edge and sort of the right downspout, and that would solve the problem. But otherwise, I think it's nicely done. It's nicely lit. It could maybe stand to be a little brighter just in the front, because the brightest part of this is off to the back left of the image. But you know, otherwise, I think it's well handled, and it's nice to see a sky with clouds in it and without dust spots. So I appreciate that. I would just brighten up the sort of bottom right-hand side of the image, just because it's all shadowed over there, and it's flat. Gives it a flat effect. So this is a cute sort of like, just like, is it a tree house? Is it a little house? It's sort of interesting. I sort of A-frame angles like this. You've got in the top of this image, you have actually multiple triangles going on, right? So left side of the roof line with the kind of white behind the leaves, and the leaves, that's just one big arrow to the left. And on the right-hand side, the roof pattern itself is an arrow to the right, plus there's a sliver of tree above that, which is a roof, another arrow out. The solution to have created all of these triangles that point you out is to actually have just shown the apex of that roof and the line of the building all the way out with trees all the way around it. That next like 6 inches of roof line or a foot of roof would have solved all the triangle problems up there. So that's just a side note. In the picture itself, the brightest part of the front here is this bright green with the piping, and it draws the eye completely. And then because the flowers, all the orchids on the porch are soft, that's not the focus, the point of focus. You know, you sort of go really right to these sort of arrows and these bright triangles, and it doesn't, you're not really looking into the porch itself. So lastly, on the left of the tree branches coming in right above the staircase, whenever you have sort of branches coming in, you want to give some context. So a full branch, attachment to the trunk. There's a few things that can really help anchor those. And right now they are just these like little random pieces that don't have a home, and they become distracting lines that take you back out. So I just think that this maybe needs to be a bit wider and then work on where the focus point is. Next. So New York, and there's a lot going on, but when I first glanced at this, and actually the second and third time I glanced at it, as much as I want to see the cityscape, what I see is the boat. So I don't really feel like this is about the architecture of the city or about the city itself. It is nice and straight. The buildings are nice and straight. I think that's well done. Feels like there might be a bow in the water a little bit between the two cityscapes, but what I see is a boat. And I don't mind the boat. Like, I like the line coming in, and you get the feel of the boat passing through the scene, and you wonder where they're off to. So I think it's a cool image. I'm not sure that it really quite fits for this topic. In terms of the cityscapes, the cities itself, I think this almost feels oversaturated. Everything is very blue. I recognize it's going to reflect the sky, but it almost feels just a bit too saturated and too contrasty back in the buildings. Next. Supreme Court, I think pretty much it's nice and it's pretty horizontal, but the building on the left is leaning in, the building on the right is forward. Again, like I mentioned at the very beginning, getting the building lines straight is going to be the hardest thing about this topic. And it's not so much because I think the actual building for the front entrance of the Supreme Court does angle in, but you need to make sure that the sort of lines of the two side chambers are straight, and it definitely isn't on the left. So just kind of something to be conscious of. The lighting itself is nice. The light fixture on the left is leaning forward, but also it's pretty bright. So I would probably try to figure out how to temper that light while everything else is probably okay. And there's probably should be some additional shadow in the entryway because of this the time of day. It seems a bit flat, like the shadows have been opened up in that area. I don't know if you have, but I just feel like it could stand a little bit more shadow to give that more dimension between those rows of columns. And I'd straighten the flagpole. And I'd crop, and this is a challenge. I would say my thought was going to be to crop in on the right to get rid of that bright spot that's down in the bottom right third. But you do have a tree that's hanging there. And so the challenge is how to give that context. There's enough tree to give it context, but it's bright. So maybe with a brush, just tone down the brightness in that little circle on the right-hand side, so it doesn't draw the eye to the edge. Nope, not that one. Further left, right there. Yep. Just toning that down, right, that little area would stop the eye from getting out of the frame over there on the right. Okay. I think this is in New York, over by the Oculus, and I think it's the roof. So I like the idea of this. What I struggled with here is it's all very soft, so I'm not sure what's in focus. And in the front, you've got this big, bright white arrow pointing out, and it takes up a third of the frame. And then between the arch below, sort of the big arch, and then the arch below, you've got a bit of sky, and then there's no separation. And you know, I get that this is a challenge. I've shot it. It's very hard to find an angle that's pleasing where you kind of get everything that you want. But I feel like if that blue sky just continued even as a thin line through there, it would sort of stand off. But I think for me, the bigger issue is that there isn't a point of focus, and it might be that the focus point was the white in the front, and so everything else is soft going back. Even at f/22, it's not carrying through. The focus is not carrying all the way through. So I want those panels, those little gray panels that are going up. To me, those should have been tack sharp, and they would have been this kind of cool, that and those lines would have really drawn the eye. But because they're soft, you start looking in other places. And there's a dust spot on the right. Just saying.
Denise hates dust spots.
It is I am not nice about them.
Ooh, you really want to put a dark corner in the image too.
I've got a few pet peeves, but at least I'm consistent. So, all right. So I'll tell you, like, when I first saw this, I kind of dug it. Like, I was like, oh, I love the reflection of the photographer in the building. So there's a piece of this that I really like, and it's that. And I like the cityscape on the outside. I mean, it's kind of these cool buildings, but the thing is, I'm like, well, how did they get that reflection? I'm like, okay, they're getting their own reflection in the window. And as I looked at it more, I see this white lampshade on the left, and I find it tragically annoying. So you could get the same exact effect by closing half the curtain or frankly moving the lamp out of the room, and you would get this effect of this reflection of the person without that. So that was like the first, like I dug it, but that throws me off, because once I'm done looking at this and I start scanning the rest of this image, the lampshade is the brightest thing in the image, and it has distinct lines. And so it's not even like a spectral highlight. It's not like a lens flare. It has this like rigidity to it that now I'm like looking at it and I'm like, oh, I get this, like a hotel room. And then that's it. So the other thing about it is that, and this is a truism of big cities, then I started looking around in the brighter areas of the scene, and you can see to the right of the reflection of our person that there are spots. It looks like dust spots, but it's really just muck on the window. You should treat that as dust spots and try to clone them out using Lightroom or Camera Raw's dust spot tool. It would take a minute. It wouldn't take a lot of minutes. And without the lampshade, I think this is really, really cool. I totally dig the person on the building. And maybe the thing to do is cut it into a square, because honestly, that's your subject, this architecture and the reflection where Sam's mouth is. Cut it right there. You don't have to worry at all about the lamp or this big green roof line, and you get to sit with this kind of neat skyline and the reflection. So I like it, but I just think it needs a little bit of post-process. I want to say this is Spain. I don't know if that is, but it strikes me like a building that's in Spain. It's really interesting. I think that I want it to be square, and I don't think this is something you can fix in post. I think it was how it's shot, and but even if you're going to go crazy with the off angle, I think that's okay. And I definitely think this is interesting. I'm just, like I said, I struggle with the left-hand side more so than the right-hand side. And it's all very bright. So I'm not sure how to highlight a deck or two, you know, like a porch or two, where you can really get into what this like kind of skeleton, almost looks like a fish face. Really draw that out, or draw the colors of the wall out. So I'd really like to explore it more. Right now, it feels all kind of very one tone, and I kind of want to zoom in more, which would remove the bottom, which I don't think is very interesting. The top part of this image is really interesting, like right across the center. And I just think with the angle that the artist is at, it's very hard because you can't really crop it or straighten it to something to focus on what I think the subjects are. So next. So I'm sure you know I'm going to tell you that the monument's not straight. That said, I totally dig this image. So I wish the monument was straight. I would straighten the monument, but the idea of kind of getting those 2 points to touch and getting the other points on the, I think it's African American Museum, on the line, that center line of the monument, I think was really kind of brilliant. But it is leaning. And so if you straighten out the lean, you'll keep those points where they are, and you'll also get rid of this little kind of off thing at the bottom left corner. But I think it's kind of a cool idea, actually, and nicely thought of. Okay, I get 5.
Yep.
Can you just put them on the grid? Can you go to grid view?
Yep.
That we don't have to go through them. Thank you.
You see them okay? I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, no, I'm okay. You lost one, I think.
Yeah.
Go back to where you were. There you go. Thank you. Number 6 is first. Number 1 is second. Number 9 is third. Number 17 is an honorable mention. And 19 is honorable mention.
Awesome. Great. Cheryl, are you on, Cheryl?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay. For first, we have Capital Reflections by Pennington.
I don't know if he's online.
Yeah, so I took that one a couple years ago. I think it was obviously right around Christmas time. Just a low angle right there at the reflection bowl to get that shot. So a good idea to cutting the red off. I appreciate that, Denise.
Yeah, nicely done. Nice to see you again, Tim.
Yeah, good seeing you. Wanted to join earlier, but we didn't have high-speed internet until 2 weeks ago at our house. So now that we have it, we can join the 21st century.
Awesome.
Nice, nice.
Okay, second is the Bell Tower Duomo, Tom, England.
Yeah, that's in Florence, and I did walk up the whole tower, and it took us quite a while to get there. They had ambulances at the bottom, which aren't in the picture, to carry off anybody who didn't quite make it to the top.
Wow.
That's awesome. So it's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Third is National Cathedral, Beth Better.
Yeah, so National Cathedral this past February, a lot of the geometry tool on this, I have to say. I watched,
you did a good job.
Yeah, watched some YouTube videos to try to figure out how to do it because I knew that is one of Denise's things. And great idea about toning down the light. I struggled with what to do with that and could not clone it out. So I'll definitely give that a shot. Thank you.
Yep. And one last thought about this is I would probably, to be honest, go back, Sam.
Sorry, I was trying to do something else.
Stop being cute. I know, don't be doing that. All right. I would crop from the right just till you get past the TV and the top of that pillar. You know, it's not, you don't need it, right? It's just a dark spot, like right exactly where Sam is, just shy of that archway. So you're kind of right on the edge, because there's no purpose for that. It's just a dark line, and the TV is a distraction because it's got bright reflection in it. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I tried that and it looked too close to
too tight
arch. Yeah. So it back and said, well, there's at least the reflection in the TV, so just went with it.
Yeah.
But see what you're saying.
Yeah. I get you. And the other thing is, you could just clone the reflection draws you to the edge, so you could clone the reflection into just all black. Or next time walk. Yeah. No, we're not cloning that. The reflection on the TV, just clone the black of the top of the TV to the bottom of the TV. Then it's just black, and your eyes will leave it. It's just that there's this really bright thing on the edge. That's all. The only other solution is to step to the left, right, when you're taking it. And sometimes we just don't see what's on our edges. It's the damnedest thing. And I get home and I frustrate myself. So
yeah.
Anyway, I like it though. Nicely done.
Honorable mention is Warsaw by Justina. It's
Thank you.
Sorry, it's Warsaw.
yeah, thank you, Denise. Yeah, I totally agree about the lampshade. Yes, I should have carried out. Yeah, I didn't notice the spots, but the lampshade is annoying. Thank you.
I dig it though. I'm like, now I'm gonna have to freaking wonder every time I'm in a hotel if I can manage to create something like that, because I'm normally pressed all the way up to the window to get me out of the reflection. And I just think that the thought to stand back and make yourself part of the image, I just think that's really really kind of brilliant to think that out. So
thank you.
At first I thought it was on the building. You know how like in Vegas they put
I did too. And then I'm like, no, that ain't it. But awesome. Yeah, I did have the same exact thought. Yeah, I had the same thought. It's like, oh, is that on the building? How cool. And then I'm like, no, she's taking the picture. Cool.
And then the last one, also honorable mention, is Monuments by Tom again.
Yay, Tom.
Hi, thanks, Denise. First thing I'm going to do is straighten out the monument in Lightroom.
Thank you, sir.
The African American Museum, gosh, a dozen years ago when this was being proposed, it's on the corner of 14th Street and Constitution Avenue. There was a huge debate about putting it there because a lot of people didn't want it to block the view from that corner of the Washington Monument, where it actually does block the view quite a bit. But anyway, it's a beautiful building, and the lacy structure on the outside is really cool.
Yeah, it's a stunning building, and sadly I've been in it, but I haven't seen the whole thing, and I've never really spent the time to shoot it. And I think that the way you saw this is really intriguing. So it was well seen.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. You might find yourself back up in advance before you know it, Tom.
All right.
Okay, can you, yeah, thank you.
20 images here, 20. And it's the same for second, third with 2 honorable mentions.
Thank you.
Okay.
So sort of similar comments. It's nice. You know, old house. I like the white doorway, the black. Probably black, but even if not, the fact that it's black and white, the dark windows, and it's on the horizon. It's definitely straight along the roof line, but the edges of the house kind of bow in. So again, it's a little bit to do with the camera lens and the angle. If you just drop 2 straight lines, the house will stand straight up, and I think it'll just make it a little bit stronger. Right now, it just feels like it's kind of leaning back a little bit. You know, it's a nice image. It's not, you know, from an architecture, it's just that sort of old style colonial home, and I think it represents it nicely. So, hold on. Golden Gate Bridge. I can't tell you how many times I've had someone else drive so I can shoot this. So very cool, nicely done. Pretty well centered. It's going to be a challenge no matter how you slice it. It does look, you might be able to straighten the 2 front ones just so they stand up straight, because they are straight in real life. And everything else about it, I think, is just well handled. And I think black and white was a good idea. Kind of looks like a benign sky, probably not quite blue, but probably more like a white sky. And yeah, I just think it's just kind of well seen. This might be even interesting if you really drug it to high contrast, just to see what it would do. You can go now. Another view of the Capitol. Capitol's leaning a little bit to the left, more dramatized by the bus stop or entry point or guardhouse or whatever it is right here. I guess it's a guardhouse maybe, information booth. On the left, that's also, you can see that front, the sort of front window on the right is leaning. So the reason it's kind of draws the attention to that too is because there's lights on there. So that's part of the challenge. It's going to take your eye forward. It's the brightest thing in this. It's bright, not the brightest thing, but it's bright, and it's in front of the Capitol. So you come to that, and that helps kind of exaggerate all the leaning. I would get rid of, clone out the little white light that's in the bottom right-hand corner of that booth, because it's brighter and it takes you, it's the dark against the trees. Sam, can you drag your cursor over to your mouse over where I'm talking about? Lower, 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 right there, right where the little hand was. Okay, that'll work. Yeah, so that little down and left, the little white light, that thing. Clone that out. The rest of the light all feels comfortable, but that's like bright and it's kind of round and takes you right into that darkness. The Capitol itself is a little bit softer, so I'm not sure if it wasn't, the focus point wasn't on those trees right in front of the Capitol, because the cupola of the Capitol is soft, as is the statue on the top. So, but I'd straighten it out. It's a neat shot. I'm not sure if you moved yourself as the photographer a little bit to the right, if you couldn't get rid of that little building in the front altogether. I know that tree will come into the Capitol a little bit, but I think it would, the structure of that roof line being so straight and triangular and bright is a little bit of a distraction. But the idea is sort of interesting. Maybe go stand on the, right by the pillars for the, above the sidewalk, step up right there, and you could get rid of it altogether and keep the same angle. Anyway, next. So this looks like a really interesting place to be. There's so much going on. I do appreciate the fact that there isn't a lot of sky, but I struggle with the fact that there's so much mountain, because the angle of this on the hillside creates sort of this triangle, which is okay, but in black and white, becomes very sort of monochromatic across. It's probably very yellow, and the trees are probably dark or green or something other than that color. And in color, you'd be able to sit in the brightness of the rocks. The way this is currently is the building itself is cutting the frame in half, and yet there's the tonality of the image is flat. So it's really kind of hard, which for me, then I actually go up the mountain and I float around in that dark part of the trees against the sky. And that's because it's the most contrast. So I'm not sure if I would exaggerate cutting it actually off some more, getting rid of the people on the right, kind of cutting deeper into it. But I'd have to play with it to sort of see how to bring it out. Now, from a standing up and is it a horizon and all that junk, I think like that doesn't feel uncomfortable at all. So I feel like it's pretty much upright where it needs to be. So in that sense, I think is well managed. I just feel like it needs some contrast somewhere in the stone to keep you on the stone. So similar to the other reflections that we had, the primary difference to me in this case is one, because it's in black and white, I'm not distracted by colors of the reflection. So my eye isn't being drawn to that white bus, right? There isn't a bus. So all of these reflections are similar yet different, and the lines are very intriguing, and the way they move through the panel kind of at a slight diagonal is very cool. For the most part, it's straight up and down and horizontal. So it's a kind of an interesting play on lines. And but again, black and white, if somebody's curtain was blue, I'm not drawn to it. It is, I get what I get. And so my eye is able to wander, and I don't really venture off anywhere. So I just think this is nicely seen and was well handled with post. I don't know if this is DC. It feels like the DC waterfront, but I could be wrong. But it is a waterfront, nice and straight. The buildings are nice and straight. So I think that was well handled. I will tell you the biggest distraction for me here, though, you could bring down the highlights for one thing. I think it's all the lights are just too bright and look very blown out. But the movement of the crane and the blur sweep that it creates dead center is distracting, because it almost feels like something's flying through, and I was like, what is that? And I stared at it for a while to figure out that I think it's lights on the crane, and the crane's in motion. So to me, that's like the biggest challenge. I think otherwise it's kind of a nice image. I think the highlights could come down, and quite possibly the shadows could open up a tad, not a lot, because I don't want it to go monotone, but I do think the trees look really, really dark, and those couple of dark buildings are super dark too. So I would play with that a little bit. Maybe adding a vignette so that you could brighten sort of the center stuff while not necessarily brightening all of the shadow. And then I think you could probably crop out 2-3 inches of sky and just go for like much more pano, because there's just not a lot of drama up there. So a nice leading line, like a vanishing point. I'm not struggling to figure out what's at the back. It's a wall. I'd probably crop this in on the left so that I got rid of that one little slice of arch, so that it kind of came down the middle of that first column and then had everything else, because right now that little slice of the background is brighter than that arch. So if you got rid of it, it would really send you down instead of sending you through. I like the bench down there. So it has kind of a vanishing point with a destination. Kind of can see yourself sitting there. It'd be kind of neat if there was somebody sitting there. That'd be cool too. Just give perspective. But I do like the scene. I like the shadows. I like the lines. I just would crop it in a little bit on that left side. So with Varghese, I think this is actually kind of a cool shot. I do like I probably even push it. This is at f5. If that had been at f22, that reflection on the window would be a beautiful starburst. So I think it's a neat, but I'm looking for more like bursting effect, because it just screams for that. And you know, I'm going to tell you that the tower itself is leaning to the right. So the curved part of the museum is nice and straight, but the horizon in the front with the like balls clearly goes up. And then if you straighten out that part of the horizon and straighten out the tower itself, I think this is a pretty cool shot in night sky. So, and it was nicely seen. I would just make a couple minor changes. So you just know this is haunted. It screams haunted, by the way. So it's kind of interesting. It is leaning a little bit to the left. So you can see that by the white column kind of fencing in the front, on the porch, and the angle of the, right across there. From left to right, it goes up to the right, and the bench is at an angle. So again, just straightening the building would go a long way here. I think this could stand to be a little bit poppier in the lights, a little bit more contrast. But it's cool. And also, if you straighten that up, you'll get rid of that scraggly tree on the top of the tree. And I think that, right there, it would disappear automatically and not be sort of an attention getter. The rest of the tree is within the building itself, but certainly a cool building. I mean, I would imagine the noises, the pops and bangs in the middle of the night. The way it was handled was very interesting because it feels scary. Kind of a cool image. I love the leading line into the blackness. I think that's very cool. I'd tone down the highlight a smidge just so you kind of get the little bit of the top left angles of the arches here. I feel like this is also part of the Oculus in New York, but I'm not sure, but that ribbing reminds me of that. So if it is, great. If it isn't, that's kind of just what it makes me think of. But I definitely dig it. And I wouldn't change very much about it. It would just be a little bit of the highlights where it seems super bright there. And otherwise, I think this is sort of nicely seen and thought out. So I don't know if it's the Arboretum or the Botanical Garden, I can never remember what it's called. Very cool. I like so this is that F22 effect. So this is this starburst here would be the same starburst that would be on that infrared hazy shot if it had been at F22. So very cool effect. Really the only thing I would change, because it's pretty level, might be the horizon is down on the right a tad, but all the pillars are nice and level, so I'm okay with that. I would clone the contrail out. So everything else being equal in this image, just getting rid of that distinct white line between the first pillar on the left and the next pillar right above the starburst would go a long way, because I just want to focus on the starburst, and that direct light line up there draws my eye right off the sun. And otherwise, I think I wouldn't leave that at all. So I would just clone that one little piece out. Next. Really sort of interesting kind of street. This front building looks very intriguing with these portholes for windows. I like that the roof line cuts where it does. It's pretty straight, actually. So from that standpoint, I'm pretty comfortable with it. It is flat. So you have this really dark building in the front, but pretty much everything to the right of that building is very one-dimensional in terms of its color. The one thing that does kind of bug me about this image is that street light and the signal light are just, they look like they're actually painted white. And there's a couple of lights on the buildings, particularly the building in the mid-dead center, the grayer building in the middle has another one of these really, really bright hot lights in it. And I don't know if that's, you could try, I think if you actually bring down your highlights, you're going to make the picture go grayer. So I don't know if that was cloned that way or if it's just blazing bright light in the image. But boy, I looked straight at the street light and I stopped looking at anything else. And then from there I bounced, to the signal light. And from there I bounced to the street light. And those two are the anchor points, because they're, if this printed, you wouldn't feel any ink there. You would just feel paper because there's no content. And unfortunately, that's what's drawing the eye. Otherwise, I think it's kind of a cool idea. Just those are too bright. So this is beautifully seen. And for as many times as I've stood at the Lincoln Memorial, I have not ever seen it. So kudos. And I think it's well done. It looks, the monument's straight. The sculpture feels slightly to the right, higher on the left, but not by much. The bottom of it is straight. So it might just be the way it plays. I think this is really well conceived and nicely handled. So kudos. So this whole house feels like it's leaning back and left. Now, very well maybe in real life. It's clearly dilapidated. But to be honest, even if it really is in real life, I would straighten it, because unfortunately that becomes the distraction, that it really feels like the photo is taken that way as opposed to the building itself. So I would straighten the building. With that, I would either have captured the top of the lightning rod or antenna on the fireplace or the chimney, or I would clone it and its wire out. So because part of it is that rod is really bright, right? So you see the bright front side here where the light is on the porch. You go up this angle, you see the one antenna, it's okay. You see the chimney, which is really dark and eye-catching. And then you see this white line that takes you right off the top. So I would either get it all so that there was sky above you to push you down, or just flat clone that out and clone out the wire that goes with it. And then you wouldn't be distracted by it at all. Just leave the old antenna where it is. I do like the front of the porch. I think that there's some really beautiful light at play here. I probably try to figure out maybe how to really draw that out, because those broken windows and the roof line and the porch and everything is really cool. So I want to know where that is, by the way. Go ahead. So this is just kind of cool. It's just a cool location, and I like how the photographer has gone to some trouble to make sure that all of the consecutive archways are in alignment and really in balance. So I think that was nicely conceived. I would probably straighten the kind of header on this very front wall, just because it does look off. I'd straighten that, but the rest of it feels really straight. Just nicely seen and nicely handled. Probably a tad more contrast. Certainly within the center of the image, not the front. The front two walls are dark enough, but a little bit more exaggeration on the shadows going back would really highlight how many archways you have here. Believe this to be Epcot. Never been there. Really, very Escher. I mean, it's a very cool building. Yeah, I don't know what to say about it. I really, really dig it. And I think actually I wish that this was more zoomed in and you just got the architecture itself without the palm trees and this front stuff that almost looks like circus tenting. I don't know if it's about, having never been there, I can't visualize, like if you moved yourself to the right, could you have gotten more? But really nicely handled. So outside of that, I would make sure the trees are tack sharp in terms of standing straight, not sharp in terms of sharpness, but I would stand those two trees up regardless of whether they were standing straight in the first place, because it does make it feel like it's off. So if the trees are straight, I think the rest of it's very cool. And I like the light and the light play and the building itself. So I think that's well handled. There does seem to be a bit of a shadowed edge against that sky. So I don't know if that is because it was a different sky, or just the brightness of the image made the sky dark, and so the photographer brightened the sky, but there's a halo between the building and the sky. So I would be very careful, and if that means you have to zoom into 400 and press your nose into it to fix on something that's this dramatically angled, and you just know those are sharp edges, that edge shouldn't feel feathered. Next. So it's a nice building. It is leaning back. So I'm going to, again, I told you hear that over and over again. You don't have the whole front doorway here. So not really sure what what you want me to look at. You have a very bright door here on the left edge, brighter than anything else in the scene. So, you know, I'm drawn to look at that. And then the building, because it's leaning back, I don't know if you want me to look at the porch with this beautiful wrought iron. Am I looking at the windows with the tree box, the planter boxes? Should I be seeing the whole doorway? You've got half a lamp on the right. I just think that this either needs to be wider or it needs to be tighter. Maybe it needs to be portrait, so you get sort of more of the upright. So I think there's something to be seen here in terms of the brickwork, but I think there's a bit too many things going on to like really call it out. And the light on the lamp post on the right, you know, because it's cut off, is distracting. And if you were to crop it out, you'd be too close to that window. So I think you just need to shoot it maybe a couple different ways and then see which fits the best. Next. So this is interesting. I mean, it's just a building in DC with this, you know, aggressive, gonna pop your tires moment if you cross it. It's interesting, but I don't know that it screams architecture to me. So again, it's a little bit different. There's a lot of bright stuff. I mean, I kind of actually would have dug this if it was just the stop sign filling the entire frame and being all beat up like that. But otherwise, you know, I'm trying to read the caution, the sign on that. I'm reading the words above. You've got these like two lights that are off to the right. There's a lot of bright things. It's also, you can see that the horizon isn't straight, and partly that's because the photographer isn't square to it. So I just think there's some things that I might approach this a little bit differently. I'm trying to shoot it again. I would also not have the shadow side to this stop sign. Again, it draws the eye over to it. It's got an arrow. There's a lot of things to the left. If that was cropped out, that would help. Maybe just cropped in tighter. I'm not sure, but I'm not sure this quite fits the theme. Next. And this is Jackson Square, New Orleans. And this is like just nicely done. I feel like maybe I would crop it a little. So you have a lamppost right on the edge and this weird little shadow on the bottom right third, right on the edge. So things on the edge can be a distraction. If you just crop to the left of that lamppost, you have the tree framing the white building on the right. I think that'd be better. Also on the left building where the, not on the church itself, but on the left building that has the roof line that goes across, the roof line angles off to the right and then it angles off to the left, but right at the left, there's a little black spot. I'd clone that into cloud because it's probably a tree, but it doesn't belong. It's not part of the building. Otherwise, I think this is really nicely done. I think it's got a nice amount of contrast. It's nicely sort of offset. I think just with a little bit of cropping, it'd be a little bit stronger. There'd be a few less distractions around the edges. Next. Okay, take it. It's from Grand View in Pittsburgh. It's a neat area, and it's a neat area to shoot from. And it's a nice big wide cityscape. So I think it's like well handled as a pano. I think that's appropriate. There's probably a bit too much sky in terms of you can maybe bring it down a little bit. It's hard to say. A pano here is really hard because the river itself is bowing. So I like that you have both arch bridges coming in. I think there's a little bit too much darkness in that cloud on the left. Sure, it was a storm cloud, but given the context of the rest of the sky, it's extraordinarily dark on the left. And it's creating an imbalance. It feels like, even though I think it is straight, I think you've done a good job there. It almost feels like it's being tugged down. And it's so dark that what I find, at least for me, is I see the city and I recognize where I am, and then I go look because I'm waiting for the lightning or I'm looking there for something going on. And I just think by brightening that part of the cloud a little bit, you would stop that from being the case. Also on this bottom right-hand corner, one second, Sam, very bottom right-hand corner, there's something blurry. So I don't know if that's cloning or if that is something that's so close in that it turned out blurry, but if you just cropped out that bottom right-hand corner, all the way to the right, if you were trying to find it, Sam, if you just crop that in a little bit, you'd lose that. It would just be trees.
I have to do this. Okay, this right here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just crop it out. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
Okay.
Okie dokie. I think $13 is first.
Oops.
5 is second. $11 is third. $19 is an honorable mention. And 2 is an honorable mention.
Okay.
Okay, well, hold on, let me get my number 2. This is an honorable mention. Okay. First place, we have I See You, Justina.
Good job, Justina.
Thank you. So I took that 2 weeks ago, and I was just surprised how empty it was. There was hardly any people there. So I had like time to look about and like see other, see things I didn't see like when it was really busy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always someone standing there and taking picture on that. So there was no one there this time. So,
yeah, nicely done.
Thank you.
If you need me to get people out of the way, let me know.
Number 2 is the reflected building, Tom.
Beautiful. Okay, this is a building at Tyson's Corner that it's about a, I don't know, 7 or 8 story building, and it's got incredible reflections coming off the glass, and they're all different buildings across the street, so you can get almost any kind of view you want. But architectural reflective glass is a very nice phenomenon to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I would say now seeing it a second time, I would say stand up. You can look at the top and the border of the glass on the top and to the bottom. It's wider at the top and thinner at the bottom. You can't really make it wider at the bottom, so I'd thin it out at the top. So it just means it's leaning back a little bit. You just need to stand it up a hair. Nothing else really changes. It'll crop a little bit off that top window, but not dramatically, and make those lines the same width. That's all.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Number 3 is the Column Shadows by Beth Better.
The DC Arboretum. So,
Thank you.
That's where it is.
I'd love to go there for nighttime. That would be really nice.
Yeah.
It's hard to get in.
I don't think you can get in.
Yeah, you have to go with somebody.
Yeah, you have to go with somebody.
They're special night events sometimes.
Yeah.
And they don't open till 8 either. So it's hard to do sunrise there.
Yeah, they close the place off at dark time, so you can't be in there at nighttime. I've tried.
You'd have to go in like the dead of winter when it's freezing cold to get a late sunrise.
Mm-hmm.
That's like your best bet, right? So.
Next.
So Tom and Beth are going to find themselves both back up in advance.
Which one is okay? So New Orleans Invite, Fred Gillis.
Yes, no, I enjoyed it. This was reprocessing an older image, but you know, your clue about that lamp. It's amazing how you miss the distractions.
Yeah,
that's very good. Thank you so much, Denise.
You're welcome. It's a beautiful image.
And then we have the golden again, Justina.
Yeah, thank you again. That was just taken from the car driving along the Golden Gate Bridge.
Glad you were driving. It'd be very scary.
No, I wasn't driving. It was my husband.
Oh. All right.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, you ready to jump in?
Yes, ma'am. You might as well just go to the grid view. That's all you need to do.
Okay, we can do that.
9 photos in this one.
Well, I mean, I want you to make them big. I just wanted to see them all again to get them, you know, for the memory. Thank you.
Not quite.
That's okay. Now you can go through them one at a time.
Okay.
First, second, and third, Denise.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. It's a beautiful image. It is, I think maybe for me, it's a tad saturated. And that's something I find myself even thinking about my stuff. The vignette, and it's probably because of the vignette, really makes that blue stand out more blue. Although I think the use of the vignette is nice and it keeps you in. So like I get the idea, but it does feel like it's just a hair saturated. So otherwise, I mean, I think that the buildings look like they're pretty much straight. The lights are nice. I'd probably clone out that blue sign on the, on the right. Yeah, I just get rid of that, make it black. It would just look like part of the trees, but because it's way off to the side like that and it's a distinctive color compared to everything else, it just catches your attention. And I'm not sure that I wouldn't just crop this whole image in, getting rid of the bright roof lines on the left and the bright building on the right, and really just kind of center on, I think this is Rosslyn, on the buildings in the middle. So I could be wrong about the location, but I think if we just centered on that, it'd be cool. Also in the bottom and the dark band right by where you are, Sam, there's the 2 trunks that are lit. Nope, back where you were. Yeah, just clone those out. The rest of the treetops are fine, but those like really random lines in the dark, just get rid of them. And then I think if you're not going to crop it in, there's a white dot right in the trees on the left towards the edge. I would clone that out. Yep. Okay. Cheryl, did you say I get 3 or 2? Sorry, I didn't write it down.
You get 3.
Thank you. Wow. So this is like a crazy scene here, and it's all over the place. It's a little hard to tell. It does feel like it's leaning to the left. And I don't know if it is. It could just be the hillside. It just really could be leaning to the left in real life, but it does feel a little bit like it has a lean on it. But it's also all very bright. So it's very hard to let the eye land someplace. There's just so much going on. So it's just a big bright day. And I don't know if you tone down, I don't know. I really don't know. There's no mid-tone, I guess is the point, right? There's some dark shadows in these doorways and windows, and then it's all very bright. And so I find it overwhelming, which is probably what it is like in real life, and also to live there. So it might be just the way it's translating perfectly, but there isn't a thing to light on, maybe a vignette to kind of stop you from going all the way to the edge, kind of a little bit like that last image, kind of focus you into the center of the image. But man, what a crazy place to experience. So it's very interesting. This is Chicago, underneath the train, the elevation under the L. It is not, the lines look straight, but the horizon, at least of this first big beam, seems to be a bit lower on the left. And it could just be about the artist is not standing dead center with the dotted line that's going down the road. So that's that might be why it's got that little bit of an angle. I think if you took yourself a little bit to the left, you get both the lamps, street lamps, kind of better balanced, because right now there's no separation on the one on the right. But it's a neat place. It's kind of a neat graphic. It's a little bit hard to tell where the focal point is. At F4, your focus point has to be like spot on, because it does feel soft. The under structure here feels soft. So I think maybe the focus point's further down the road. So maybe even at F8, but it would have slowed it down a lot. So you'd had to bring your ISO up as well. So I think there's just a couple of things I would do a little bit differently, but the straightening out that beam and the road, the crosswalk, I think would help as well. Next. Really cool building, that kind of colonial style architecture. I like it. Again, it's off in its angling, right? So the front right is back, the front left, or the back left is forward. So I would work on what's straight and not straight. I like the bright yellow on the flag. I mean, it's a real eye, you kind of take your way down this road and you see that, and it takes you right up to that rooftop garden. So it's very interesting. I've shot stuff like this in Cuba, and it's a real challenge to try to capture all the buildings and the angled lines. So you're never going to get it horizontal, but you can get them so the buildings are tweaked up to straight, and I think that would help. In this particular scene, whatever that is on the porch, the little decking, that's kind of a big white square. Maybe it's an air conditioning, maybe it's a refrigerator. It's hard to say. The one below it looks like air conditioning. I'd probably prefer that not to be there. Not that you could clone it out or anything, it'd just make a mess, but it's kind of unfortunate that it's there, because the rest of the scene is pretty cool. Next. So I really dig this image. It's really nice and straight. It feels very comfortable in terms of it being straight. Even that sort of umbrella in the back left is straight. The glass panes on this curved building, I think this is like really well handled. I actually like its softness. That said, I probably would take the black slider as a global adjustment and darken it a little bit, just not to like darken the midtones as much as the blacks. And that would like kind of just pop those shadows a little bit. But man, I think this is like a really cool image, and I do like that it's hazy. So I wouldn't try to get rid of that. I would just say just a smidge in the black slider would just give it a bit of contrast and make the rest of it pop. This is beautiful. I think it's nicely done. Feels pretty straight. And the use of the long exposure for the car going by is really nicely conceived. So unlike the other image that had the like red and white from a car off to the left of the Capitol, that wasn't prominent and it wasn't part of the subject matter, right? So it actually drew us away. But the fact that these lights are going all the way through the image really show sort of the drama of the cityscape. And then the capture of this building of the African-American Museum is just beautiful. It really, at night, maybe that's why I've never stopped to shoot it. I've always been there during the day, but the lattice work, or the almost like lace work of the building is really dramatic here at night. So that might have to be a road trip next time I'm in town. So it's nicely done. It feels like the building museum, but I don't actually think that it is. It's just because there's something in the middle of it. But it's just nicely captured. The walls are nice and straight. The horizon is nice and straight. The flag is nice and straight. So, good job for the artist to like take the time to get our lines all in unison. I just think it's really quite lovely. I probably would use a little bit on the blacks. Again, not the midtones. You don't want to use the shadow slider so much, but just to bring in a little bit more contrast to the middle of that scene. But yeah, beautifully handled. I think you could actually take off the bottom chandelier, by the way. And I suggest that, yeah, right there. Like if you cropped right across that cross beam, just past right there, then you wouldn't be cutting off the chandelier. So if you couldn't get the whole chandelier, that would be a way to handle it without losing very much. There's not a lot going on there. You keep the nice angle on that structure of the roof. Pretty neat. This would be epic without the humans, or like maybe one human. It does feel a little bit, I want to say the words feel a little bit at an angle. So the tower in the back is nicely centered within the panes and it's straight, but I feel like it could come down a little bit on the right. It's hard to say. This is a really weird angle with the arches in the inside. I think it's nicely done. I like that the people are actually silhouetted. I would probably exaggerate the silhouette of the person in the bottom right-hand corner. So like everybody else, you have a back. This person in the right-hand corner, the hijab is red, the shirt is blue, and there's enough light there to see that. And then you see the white of their hand. So I would actually use a brush and just make that person the same kind of silhouette you have here on the left. Because right now it's something, the bright red in the hand are eye-catching. But man, that window scene is really lovely. I would like to be there first thing in the morning where I could get no people and just that arch with the window scene. I think it'd be beautiful. I can honestly say I don't know where this is. So, first though, I've been pretty clear on where things were. Just a cute scene. I like the building. I like the contrast in the building. The carriage is really nice. In a perfect world, you would have none of the people standing on the road. You just have the church and the carriage. I think that'd just be spectacular. I get that you can't handle that. You can't make that piece happen. So for what it is and as it is, I think that it's really beautiful. I wonder if you push this to F22, if you wouldn't get the starburst off the gold dome. You might. But yeah, just a nice scene. I do think that that guy on the red, the blue, I wish there was a little bit of separation. He's so tall. At least she passes under the window. He's hitting the window and the lamppost. But again, things you can't control. And if you waited for them to be out of the scene, the carriage would be gone too. So nicely seen. Okay, right. 3, huh? 6 is first. 5 is second. 7 is third.
Okay.
All right, for second and third, we have DC Knights first, Robert Miller.
Beautiful.
Is Robert on?
Oh, yes, I am. Hello.
Hey, Robert, big winner.
Hello, everybody. Well, thank you. This was obviously a night shot. I was down on the mall and just trying to shoot some monuments and stuff that caught my eye, and just happened to see this. And I thought with the cars going back and forth in front of it, that long exposure would be a nice capture. So happy it turned out the way it did.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Second
Actually,
play.
stop. Go.
Oops,
wait.
sorry.
Back.
Yep.
Sorry, go back to that. So the only thing, Robert, I would do is right where Sam's mouse was a second ago, go back to the left, Sam. Left. My left. That light right there. And that one, I'd clone that. I just clone that right out to the trees. I'd leave the pole. I would just clone the light itself, only because it's like right on the edge. Yeah. Right. And otherwise it wouldn't draw me over. It didn't draw me over to begin with, but I think that one little spot gone would just keep you kind of within the confines. But anyway, nicely done.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. I love this one.
It's a foggy day.
It's really cool.
Nice.
Where is that, Nikki?
So this is in Atlantic City. It's the Ocean Hotel. So it's out on their pool deck, and yeah, it looks out to the pier where the Ferris wheel and whatnot is. So it was all rain. There might have been a little bit of fog, but I had a bald white sky. I dehazed. The opposite of haze.
You hazed it.
Yeah, no.
I added fog.
You hazed it.
Oh yeah.
I love it, and I love the hint of blue in it.
Yeah.
So just so you know, like I like the blue cushions that just like this little pastel-y feel to it. It's really nicely done, Nikki.
Thank you.
And third place is Draped with Pride, Sam.
Yeah, that is the old post office.
The post office. Yeah.
Yeah, I took this last year during, we did a photo shoot there, and I took my daughter to do her photos with her wedding gown. And this is actually an iPhone picture. I'm just encouraging everyone to just use whatever you have with you. I mean, I had my big camera. I had my big camera with me, but I just happened to be wandering around waiting for them to change or something. And and we were actually staying in a room behind the flag. So I went all the way to the other side because obviously I didn't have good views from where I was staying. So,
yeah, it's nice. Yeah, I couldn't drag that out of my head because it like struck me like the building, and I'm like, no, I know which building it is. But yeah, yep. Fred got it right. He said it was the post office. Yeah, nicely done, Sam.
Okay, you want to just
all right,
look at these really quick.
This is
so we have 11 in this one.
Okay, so for 11, I think it's still, yeah, it's first, second, and third.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okey-dokey. Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, start.
Okay, what a brain. Yeah, no, I was like, I thought this was the last photo, and then I'm like, oh no, you've already picked the first photo. I was just sitting here waiting for you to do your thing. I was like, well, okay, my bad. All right, sorry about that, guys. Yeah, so kind of a cool scene. I like the leading line of this decking into the scene. I think that's kind of cool. There are some bright things happening on our left, which, you know, I feel about that already. So they kind of are a distraction because they are so far to the left. But, you know, I like the river scene. I like the fact that the sort of row of the buildings take you to the center and the trees bring you back around. So kind of very cool with that. It's straight, the horizon's straight. I think for me, the one thing I would do differently here is I would take out like 2/3 of the sky. So I wouldn't come all the way down to the trees on the right, but I would come down to what would be like a 1/2 inch on my screen and then across, maybe a little more, easy a couple inches off the top here because the sky is bright. And so you kind of find your way down to this dark spot that there is nothing in the center of the downriver. And then you get up in the clouds, and then those clouds whisk you off to the right and you're out of the scene. So if you just come down a little bit, leave a little bit of the line in the clouds. So you don't want to go all the way to where it's dark, but just so you get a little bit of it, that'll really cap you down into your scene and make, perfect where Sam is. And it would make everything else bigger. And with that in mind, you could probably crop on the deck right where the little white thing is on the deck. So you get rid of that reflected triangle. Nope, not that far. Low, back, down, right across, like in that area, right around there. You would get rid of that big bright white thing on the decking, and you get rid of the arrow from that little roof that's pointing you out of the scene to the bottom. Yeah, cool image. This is spectacular. It's the only really way to put it. I mean, just getting all of the arches kind of in a line, the walls are nice and straight, the multi-patterns that are happening here is really cool. It's funny, those might be lamps in the back. They look like eyes on almost like on a medieval mask. Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess if they really belong there, I'm not sure I wouldn't clone them out personally, just because unless somebody is in this group that was standing there with you, they'd never know if they were there or not, and they look like a face. And maybe that's cool too. So like I'm just saying, like you go straight back to them, and then I get stuck staring at them because they are brighter. So if you weren't going to clone them, I might shadow them a little bit just so the eye wanders to the rest of this incredibly beautiful mosque. The people in it give some perspective. The lady with the grandchild gives a little bit of perspective to just how massive the building is. So I would shoot this with and without them in it. If they were eventually going to walk through, I would sit there all day if I had to get it without people. But I do think with these people in it and fairly centered, that it gives a really nice perspective. So kudos to getting them. I'd probably have to shoot it both ways though to satisfy my need for no people in my photography. But it's beautiful. All right, Chicago, I think. It looks like a Chicago building. Actually, I think it is. It feels like it's a little bit high on the right, like the horizon might be a little bit lower in that back. So not right in front of us, but back behind the boat, behind the stop sign. I'd probably make sure that that line was straight from there across to the other, right there, yep. Otherwise, the buildings look nice and straight and everything else is pretty comfortable. I would personally take a brush and just brighten the path so that not the outside, but right where Sam is right there, I would just brighten that shadow a little bit because that's your leading line. And right now it doesn't really feel like a leading line because it's so shadowed in the front. So if you opened it up a little bit, that would take you right through all this darkness that you're standing in and take you right back to this like big city. So I just think about that, but it's nicely done. There's a lot going on. So other than that being super dark, it's super heavy in the bottom left. So by highlighting that a little bit, you would open that up. And then I think the cityscape itself is nicely handled. So it's well done. Nice and sharp, everything it kind of should be for that kind of scene. So again, looking straight up, a building like this really makes it lean back. And it's also sometimes quite difficult to straighten out without it going crazy on you. So you might play with that. But even if you were going to leave it the way that it is, I would crop in and get rid of that random tree or clone the random tree out. So to me, that's a total distraction because much like a bright spot in a dark scene, a dark spot in a bright scene like that is a distraction. So it might as well be a highlight, but when you have this big sky that's white, it ends up drawing the eye just like a bright thing would. So clone it or crop it. If you cropped it, I don't think you'd really lose anything on the building. I think if you're going to, especially with the angle of the building, if you want to make it dramatic, maybe crop to a square and get rid of the tree and get rid of some of this heaviness on the right. Next. This is inside the Oculus in New York. It's such a really cool building. The rib cage that it creates, it's like being inside of a whale. I like the movement of the people. I'm not sure though, to be honest, I can't tell really quite what's in focus because the ribs look like they're out of focus. The people at the back end are out of focus. And I don't see anything particularly in focus in the center. So usually in a scene like this, trying to find, making sure something is sharp, like maybe these two people talking kind of midway up, just off center on the left, they should be sharp and the world should be moving around them. The other thing is you've got these two bright booths at both bottom left and bottom right. I would crop, which is hard because you got the guy in the wheelchair there who you'd be cutting in half. So finding that kind of right moment is really difficult. I would probably crop that out and clone out the guy in the wheelchair or move him back if you wanted him to be in there. And actually, I do see the tiles right in the center are sharp, but there isn't anything else in that plane. So it's, I like it. I like where you're headed with it, but I think it needs a little bit. And then I would maybe bring a gradient down at the top because it's so bright that you kind of leave the floor and go out, follow the rib cage up and go out. Cool shot. So. Makes me hungry. I haven't eaten yet tonight. The sides of the building, everything kind of looks straight, but it does look like it's kind of leaning back. Much like the other image that I was talking about earlier with the street vendor, I feel like this is more a street scene. And I feel like the subject matter is from the right-hand White Castle left to the left-hand White Castle sign, and the two people that are talking here on the street corner. And I feel like but the brightest part of the image is to the right of the right-hand White Castle building, sign, excuse me. So that's like this bright white door, this like little thing that opens, you know, there's a lot going on the right-hand side that's a distraction, but the subject is the two people. So I would definitely crop this to square, maybe keep the two signs, maybe vignette it, brighten up where the people are so that they stand out. But from an architecture scene, I feel this is more of a street scene as opposed to architecture. Next. So similar to that early image up in the novice category where we're focusing just on this one aspect of the architecture and yet different, right? It looks like it's very nice and straight. You get this leading line of all of these reliefs that go down, and you get the sense of the distance that this goes. You've got all these nice archways, particularly the ones that take you up to the top right corner. So I think it's all very interesting. I feel like the subject matter, though, is the second column, not the first. So I probably crop in about halfway on the first column because it's super bright and it's on the edge. But I think I'd like to look past it, kind of similar to that other comment I made with that arch where you get rid of the stuff that's bright. That would make you focus on the second column features. And then in the very bottom right-hand corner, I would either crop that in a smidge just to get rid of that little bright spot in the very bottom right, or I would tone it down by adding a shadow back there. So it, again, because you have this line of really cool stuff that ends in a bright spot in the corner, and then you leave the frame. Next. I think it's like super cool. And the funny thing is it's probably tall enough to walk through, but I feel like I'm in a gnome home. I feel like this is like super short, and quite possibly it is, but it feels like it's like really pushed down, which is a trip. And it's also slightly off center. And I feel almost like for the kind of thing that we're looking at, maybe it should either be dramatically off to the left or centered. But the archways, and that could be a crop, by the way. I think if you moved your body, you wouldn't get the archways stacked the way they are. So it might just be cropping a hair off the right to get it to line up. But it is really kind of interesting. I think it'd be an interesting place to explore. And it might be, I almost want to know the context, right? If I saw a person, I go, oh, it's really big. Right now, it kind of feels really small. So it's got me intrigued, which is the whole point of photography, by the way, right? Keeping the viewer in your image, trying to figure it out. Next. So this is a really interesting photo. Interesting in a couple different ways. It's one of the New York bridges. I love the fact that it's either de-hazed or hazed, as Nikki did, or really foggy, and you've lost everything in the background. So I think that's really interesting on the left-hand side. Now on the right-hand side, it's super intriguing because I'm trying to visualize like a building that looked like that last time I was there. So it is like, wow, is that really there? It's like this crazy thing, this crazy huge building coming out of mystery. So it's just very intriguing all the way around, and yet distinctive. And I love the leading lines of this, of these stairs, the water coming up, the tree is just kind of a nice, it's like a point to get to, and then it it offsets the rest of it. So I just think this is like nicely handled. So whoever's image this is, well done. And you might be able to get away with a couple inches off the left without losing much, just because there's this big area of sky. Since there isn't anything in the horizon there because of the fog, if you cut that down a little bit, you would pull the bridge out from sort of the center and still have that nice curve. So square might work. You'd have to play with it a little bit, but it's a really neat image. San Francisco. It really makes me wonder where you are. Other side of Alcatraz. Very intriguing perspective. I spent a lot of time there, and I just cannot wrap my brain around it. So good job. Yeah, I like it. I think it's neat. This clouds maybe could use a little bit of structure. They seem a little bit bright, so they've lost their structure there, right behind the buildings. But the scene itself is really interesting. It's a great perspective of sort of this ticky-tacky part of the old city leading into these new buildings and how it's grown up around it. So nicely seen, nicely captured. Not sure. I wouldn't crop a little bit. Like on the left, I'd crop just because you've got that little black building right on the edge. So if you cropped in literally centimeter right there, just to get rid of that, I think that'd be nice. Like then the buildings would just come down and end in the fog back there. And then I'd probably crop off the building on the right that is the straight lines, because again, there's nothing really going on over there except for the fact that building's on the edge. Yeah, it would cut your little tower there in the back. I don't know. I'd have to play with that. You might not be able to go anywhere with the one on the right. It feels a little bit soft, and I don't know if that's just haze in the air, but otherwise, I mean, I think it's a really kind of a cool image. And again, a perspective I've never seen, and I spent 37 years there, so good job. All right, Harper's Ferry. Nice scene of this bridge. I've never, again, not a scene I've seen. So I think this is like, well conceived, and looks like a really bright contrasty day, but I think it's handled pretty well. The bridge stands out against the stone. I like the fact that you've got the sign up on the mountain that you can see a little bit. I might play with that just a little bit to draw it out. And I'd probably tone down the water a hair, and you can do that with a gradient. It's just this very bright, heavy weighted on the bottom. And I think if you just tone that down a little bit, you would stick with the structure of the bridge, which is, I think, your topic here. But otherwise, I think it's really neat. You might also experiment with standing in this exact same place and having a really long exposure. So take down the ISO so that you can drag the shutter some. And what you get two things from that. As long as it's not windy, you won't get movement in the trees, but you will get smoother, glassier water. And then the people walking on the bridge would blur out, but the bridge itself would stay in focus. And it would just kind of give a little bit different kind of a scene, right? You wouldn't get any people there. And I think smoother water would be nice, because the water right now, you start looking at it, trying to find things in the water because there's texture there. That's it. All right, do I have 3 again, or is there an honorable mention in this because it's 11?
No, it's still 3.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see them all. Sam, can you close that side panel? All right. 2 is 1. Nine is 2. can you highlight 7, 3, and 10, and then hit the 3 frame by the face down on the bottom? Thank you.
Oh.
Nailed it. Okay.
I do this for culling.
I know. It's hard. I think the archways is 3.
This one?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Whoop. So we'll go with.
First one belongs to Pat. It's Hassan II's Mosque Walkway. I totally mispronounced all that.
That's okay. Denise, you're fading away, by the way, in your backdrop. It's really.
Oh my God, look at that. Because I'm sitting in the
only
dark.
Your face.
I'm just ahead.
Pat was online earlier. Is he still online?
I am.
Hello, Pat.
Good. Hey.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Hassan second house, Casablanca, Morocco. And it was a busy place. So I sat there for hours getting shots with picture and not with people and no people in it. So I have both.
Beautiful.
Nice. Are those sconces in the back?
It's sconces, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But do they look like eyes? You ever see that movie with DiCaprio where he's going to put the metal
Man in Iron Mask?
That one. That's exactly what it looks like. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, 2.
2 is Into the Fog by Robert Miller.
So this actually was fog. I didn't haze it. So yeah, so it was actually a hazy, foggy morning. I'd gotten out into Brooklyn really early and the fog was a whole lot thicker. And this was, like 9 o'clock or so. So the light was good, but the fog was still sort of hanging on the water. And so I saw this and I actually did bring the left side in some and played with coming in a little bit more. But when I did, it just felt a little, to me, unbalanced coming in even further. So just it felt good where it was. But yeah, I was
it's beautiful.
very happy with this morning.
Yeah. Dang. I'm like, I've never seen that. Now I'm mad.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Thanks.
Number 3.
Another one I'm not going to pronounce right. So this one is, I think it's the Doge's Palace columns in Venice by John.
Yes, that's the detail of the columns in Venice, Italy. Doge's Palace.
Nice.
I love these. These are awesome.
I do too.
That's like the best part right there.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to pull up all the number 1s for you.
Yeah, forgot about this.
Well, but it's quick.
I know. All right. Except for there's, oh yeah, I guess it would be 6. Duh.
Yep. Can you see everything okay?
Yes, ma'am. I think I'm going to have to go with the African American Museum. They're all really good. So I was like kind of all the things going on there.
Awesome. Yay.
Robert Miller, DC Nights.
Thanks, Denise. I appreciate the feedback.
Oh yeah, well, great job. Beautiful photos. Everybody did a great job. So
yeah,
thank you for sharing.
All right, well, thank you.
So there have been, I don't know if anybody wants to like hang out. This isn't a good example, Sam. If we go back to the novice, I guess probably the easiest place to go. Actually, let's do that one of the bean.
Oh, the bean.
The bean, yeah.
Okay.
I have no idea how this is going to turn out. Of course, I picked one that's kind of hard, but if you go to, you need to bring down your.
Yeah, I have people's faces in the way, so it's going to be a second.
Okay, there you go. And then develop, and then scroll down. Nope, not there. Oh. Get out of that. Scroll down. Keep going.
Oh, you want me to go to transform?
I do. Okay, so see the little hatch marks on the top left? Yeah, grab that. Draw a straight line from. Well, that's fucking weird. See the building in the back along the street there? There. Yep. Right. Nope. To the right. That this left edge of that building. That building, but left edge. Yep. From the not the roof, but right below that roof angle. Draw a straight line down. So from there down. Along the edge of the building, keep going all the way to the bottom, all the way down, keep going, stop, right about there. Now draw to the right of that, the front building with all the like texture on the top.
This one?
That one, do the exact same, yeah, same thing on that left edge, not there.
Oh.
I guess you could try that. Yeah, because you're on the angle, but go ahead, a little bit to the, now just a little bit to the left before you let go. Right there.
Ooh.
Okay, now it's too far because it's leaning to the right. So you have to go, I don't know why that loop is showing because that's super annoying. Yeah. Take that one and drag it a little bit to your right. Okay, try it again. Nope, go left. I just never know the right direction. More. There you go. Yeah. So close. You might have to play with it a little bit, but those buildings now are 100% straighter than they started. And all you did is draw 2 lines. So let's go back to, don't have the ones, but go back to all the novices again, because I want to show another technique.
Where was that?
Another example.
Okay. The black and white ones?
Well, yeah, but you have ones selected, so I need to see everything.
Oh, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Sorry.
So let's go with the number 3. So in this case, we're going to go back down to transform. The hatches again. Okay, in this case, so you see the windows on the left, right before the bowing. Yeah, but not there. So it's between that wall and where the, yep, but go to the top, go up. All right, and now draw it straight down along the edge of that brick, not on the, like, a little bit to the right. Okay. Now go to the front light, right below the light bulb. Okay, follow that down and go straight down the center of the pole, all the way down to the bottom, right there.
Ooh.
It's a little bit too forward. So take that one, nope, other side. Keep going the other way. More. More. Yeah, something like right about there. And then go to the color color novice. Might need you to go to the, there was something I wanted to see them all again. So go to the train station. Okay, so same place. Okay, now this time, is this the one I want? There was a better example of the horizon. Go back to intermediate. Let's do the number 5. Okay, so there's a trick to using transform tool. You can only draw 3 lines at once, but it doesn't, and it's a little bit different when you're doing it in Lightroom because you're limited to the 3. But if you're doing this in Photoshop and you're in camera raw, you can do your 3, hit OK, and then do them again until you get exactly what you want. So that's just something to think about. Here we're going to go ahead and grab the hatches again. Now go across the top of the staircase. Yep. Yeah, a little bit higher on the right. There you go. Now draw basically, I think the top of that building's thinner. So I would say, no, not there. You could do it there. Well, you could try that. Try that and see what happens. Go straight from, not from the top. Well, you can go from the top, straight down the center of the glass panes.
From here?
Yeah, as long as you're, yeah, that's good. Straight down the center of the glass and a little bit to the right. Yeah, let go. And up a little bit back to the right. Pretty close. Now, that's fine. You can stop there. That's good. No, that's left. You went left. There you go. And then say right across, so the sidewalk, not the one right in front of you, but the one right, the straight line, that one, go from left to right there. See what happens.
Following it?
Yep.
Oh, pretty cool.
Okay. And then in this case, you have your windows are off, right? So that's fine. If you go back now to transform and it says offset, you can play with the offset. So if you go, one of them goes up and down and one of them goes left and right. And I just play with them until I see. So you can sort of keep going to that side until you get those windows in balance. That's all right. Go up all the way over. Perfect. And then you're kind of done. Now, I think there's a little bit too much foreground. I personally, but see, you're not centered. You've got an angle that's off here because the top of the building's off. Nope. It's not that. I would get rid of that one. So if you catch it, hit delete.
Oh.
And then draw a line across the top of, see the little points above the windows, above the lights? Up. Oh. Nope. Well, that actually went bad. Do that one more time if you can do that again. Sometimes it just works. Yeah, that almost looked like it did it. Yeah, so this one is one of those, so you're close and yeah, but it's still off a little bit. It's because the person is not dead center. Anyway, you kind of get the gist. If you play with these, and this takes patience, this is a really hard image to straighten, but it's a lot closer than it was. And if you just kind of tweak these things a little bit with that tool, you'll eventually get it aligned. And if you end up with some sky like that was, you can also use the scale tool. She did constrain crop, but you can also scale it if you want to have more control. That's probably a little bit better.
Yeah.
I feel like we need, if this is one I would have done in Photoshop so I could repeat this process until I nuanced it to where I wanted it. But the long and short of it, that's how you use that tool. And with buildings and stuff in general, it does a pretty tremendous job of straightening things up and getting these things a lot better than we can. The stairs are off here now. So if you could go through that exercise one more time, which you cannot, I don't think, if you come back in here, those return and you can't keep drawing lines. In Camera Raw, you would have just hit OK, and then you would have started again and made some more adjustments and you could get this like totally square. So anyway, just so you can sort of see how the tool works. Yeah, the stairs, that stair per area is still off. And I don't think you could draw a fourth line. You could certainly try, but I don't think you can.
Ooh.
Oh, maybe it will. Ooh, they might have added one.
But it didn't.
Yeah, see, it didn't do anything.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's three. You get two. You can either do 2 vertical, 1 horizontal, or 2 horizontal, 1 vertical, or 3, I think, all in one direction. So anyway, that's a transform tool. And in Camera Raw, it's called geometry now. I don't know why they bothered with that. It does exactly the same thing. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I hope that answers the question for folks who've never seen it, but that's what I was talking about.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Denise, very much.
My pleasure, kids. Any questions before we abandon each other for the rest of the night?
Thanks, Denise.
Okay.
Yeah,
my
thanks,
pleasure.
Denise.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Make sure to check
out. Go out and have a cocktail for me.
Make sure to check out the meetup.
Thanks
or
for
our
the
website that's out there too.
And the meetup has all the stuff coming up though. All right. Thank you.
Bye, kids.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye.